we've already encountered the term fallacy before in chapters 3 and chapter 4. In chapter 3, we talked about deductive fallacies, which are fallacies of form. And just real quick, back up on the definition of a fallacy: it's a mistake in reasoning, an error in the logic of the argument. Another way to say it is it's a bad argument, or it doesn't even reach the level of being an argument. Now, the deductive fallacies we studied, like I said, are more about form. It's about, we know that a good deductive argument is valid and sound. The valid part refers to the form. And when a deductive argument fails to adhere to or to reach up to the validity, the form of being valid, then we call it invalid. And there are particular forms that takes, in like affirming the consequent and denying the antecedent, that we studied in chapter 3. Now that's just an aside, and just kind of to help you understand the rest of the fallacies we're going to be studying now. In chapter 4 on inductive reasoning, we briefly covered a couple inductive fallacies that had to do with sample arguments. So remember, a sample argument is when you take a good representative sample of a population and then you draw some conclusion about that population, just like we did with the barrel of apples example. But in that chapter we saw that you can quote-unquote fail to take enough apples out of the barrel, and these are called bias samples, and we even have a name for it when people give their own story only as the only justification to believing in what they're saying, or in some sort of claim or proposition, and we call that anecdotal evidence. So that's a fallacy as well. Now we will encounter anecdotal evidence again, because as you can see from the name of chapter 7, it's inductive fallacies. So my point in kind of this preamble is that the first fallacies we discussed were about form. We're now moving on to more specifically focusing on fallacies of content. And the reason why there's 2 full chapters devoted to that in the text is because fallacies of content are much more common. So that's what fallacies are. Now, chapter 6 deals with relevance fallacies. And what that means is it means the topic of relevance. So it's saying these are fallacies of relevance. In other words, they're actually irrelevant. They happen when the premise is irrelevant to the conclusion. So we class them as relevance fallacies, but they happen when the premise is not relevant to the conclusion. The next chapter, like I said, inductive fallacies, will basically be cases in which the premise may be relevant to the conclusion, it may connect somehow, but it's not enough. And that's really what anecdotal evidence is. When somebody says they saw God in the woods or something, it's not that their experience wasn't related to God. It was relevant in the sense that they believed it was connected, but it just wasn't enough evidence to support the claim that God exists from only their experience. So anyways, inductive fallacies will still have some relevance, there just won't be enough or good enough evidence. But that's chapter 7. For now, in chapter 6, we're just going to look at fallacies that in which the premise is not relevant to the conclusion.